I'm a single mother to my 8-year-old son, Mark. When this happened, he was 5, and I was 27. We live in a house I inherited from my grandparents, located in a quiet part of town with a lot of older residents. It has been our home ever since. This incident occurred during Christmas time. Mark and I were out shopping for gifts for the family. We went to the mall, stopping at some clothing stores and a hardware store where I picked up a gift for my dad. After finishing our errands, I treated Mark to burgers and ice cream at McDonald's. As we left the mall through the south exit, we encountered a mall Santa standing outside. He waved at us and greeted Mark in the typical Santa fashion. Then he knelt to Mark's level and asked him what he wanted for Christmas. Mark, holding my hand, pulled me closer to Santa. I let him, as the man seemed like an ordinary, friendly Santa. Mark told him he wanted a Nintendo Switch, which was ironic since I had already planned to get him one. The Santa chuckled and said, "If you're good, maybe you'll get it," while winking at me. I smiled politely. Santa stood up, then looked at Mark and said, "Your mom's a looker, you know that?" Mark giggled, though he didn't understand the comment. I laughed nervously, not wanting to be rude, and we exchanged small talk about the holiday chaos. He claimed to work for the mall. I made an offhand remark about how stressful Christmas could be as a single mom, and jokingly said I could use Santa's help. Then Santa asked Mark if he had heard the song "I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus." Mark nodded. Santa leaned in with his cheek, suggesting he wanted a kiss. I decided to give a harmless peck on his fake beard, but as I leaned closer, he turned his head in an attempt to kiss me on the lips. I recoiled just in time, feeling startled and creeped out by his aggressive move. Santa laughed in a way that was far from jolly. Unnerved, I said, "Come on, Mark," and hurried away with him. The man shouted, "Merry Christmas," as we left. Driving past the mall's back exit, I noticed he was no longer standing outside. At the time, I dismissed it, not realizing what might happen next. When we got home, I locked the door and settled in with Mark to watch a Christmas movie. However, our cozy evening was interrupted when the doorbell rang unexpectedly. It was late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I told Mark to stay put while I went to the door. "Who is it?" I called out. A man's voice replied, "It's Santa." My heart sank. I told him to leave or I would call the police. He claimed I had dropped something from my bag and that he wanted to return it. When I asked what it was, he said he didn't know and suggested I open the door to find out. I refused and told him to go away again. Feeling uneasy, I called the mall's management office to report the incident. To my shock, the person on the phone said the mall didn't officially hire a Santa. Whoever the man was, he had been acting independently. This revelation left me deeply unsettled. I returned to Mark, but my mind was racing. Making an excuse to step away again, I went to the kitchen and peeked out the window. With the kitchen light on and the darkness outside, I couldn't see much. Suddenly, I heard a deep "ho ho ho" from outside. My blood ran cold. He was still out there. I called the police and reported that a man dressed as Santa had followed me home. Officers came, took my statement, and left. Their presence offered some comfort, but I remained on edge. A few nights later, the doorbell rang again at a similar time. Mark was already asleep, and I had been watching TV in the living room. I turned it off, went upstairs and stayed there for the rest of the night, too afraid to go back downstairs. The next morning, as I was leaving the house, I found a note taped to the front door. It was typed and printed. The message read, "I'll just be blunt. You know who this is. I didn't mean to scare you the other night. After 6 hours of playing Santa, it's hard to keep my hormones in check when a gorgeous woman talks to me. You and your son are the cutest things ever, and I'd love to be a part of your family one day. I'm sure you felt the connection we shared. I already know where you live. Now I just need your number. Text me whenever and maybe we can plan something. Happy holidays if we don't speak soon. Best, Ted." Horrified, I took a picture of the note and immediately called the police. They assured me they would investigate using the phone number he provided. A detective later informed me that the man would not contact me again and advised me to report him if he did. Thankfully, I never heard from that man again. I can only assume the police made it clear that any further contact would result in his arrest. This is a short but deeply scarring story from my early childhood. I grew up in an average middle-class home in the suburbs, and my sister and I were huge fans of Christmas. I must have been about 6 years old when this happened, because we had just moved into our new house. This memory stands out vividly in my mind, one of my earliest and most unsettling experiences. On Christmas Eve, I always struggled to sleep. Even as a young child, the anticipation kept me wide awake. I would stay up late in my room playing video games on my old box TV until I eventually passed out from exhaustion. On the night in question, I was playing a Star Wars game on my PlayStation 1. At some point, I had to use the bathroom, so I turned the TV volume down low and quietly snuck out of my room, knowing my mom would be upset if she caught me awake so late. The upstairs bathroom was just down the hall, and after finishing, I tiptoed back toward my room. But as I approached, I heard an odd rustling sound coming from downstairs near the Christmas tree. My first thought was, Santa. Fueled by curiosity, I crept down the stairs as quietly as I could. The sound of rustling pine needles grew louder the closer I got. When I reached the bottom of the staircase, I peeked around the wall into the living room. The only light came from a flashlight, and I saw a man crouched behind the tree. I could see his legs and the black bag he had placed on the floor. Suddenly, he stepped out from behind the tree, his flashlight illuminating his face. He looked directly at me, raised a finger to his lips, and whispered, "Shh." Yes, I'm Santa. Even at 6 years old, I wasn't naive enough to believe this man was Santa. He looked nothing like the Santa I knew from books and movies. Terror gripped me, and I started screaming for my mom and dad at the top of my lungs. The man panicked, seemingly unsure whether to take the bag of stolen items with him or leave it behind. He grabbed nothing and bolted for the front door. I don't remember if the door was locked or already ajar, but I vividly recall him escaping out the front as my parents came racing down the stairs. I screamed something like, "There was a man in here." My parents immediately noticed the black bag the man had left behind, filled with ornaments and gifts he had been trying to steal. From this point, my memory gets fuzzy, so I later asked my parents what happened next. According to my dad, he rushed outside in his slippers, furiously searching for the intruder, but the man was already long gone. The Christmas tree was a mess. Many ornaments were missing or lying on the floor, while the rest were inside the black bag. My dad was livid, especially when he realized the burglar had targeted our sentimental ornaments, ones that held years of family memories. The police later determined the man had broken in through the back door, using a crowbar to force it open. The chipped wood on the frame was evidence of his entry. As it turned out, another house just a few blocks away had also been robbed the same night, and the incident made it onto the local news. It was undoubtedly the same person. I don't remember much from when I was 6, but this night remains etched in my mind as if it happened only a few years ago. It's a chilling memory of how something meant to be magical, Christmas Eve, was turned into a frightening experience by someone's greed and malice.